The Holy Gospel according to John. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked, "So, you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Pilate asked him, "What is truth?" The Gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. Friends, grace and peace to you from God our Creator and from God's beloved Son Jesus, whose reign we celebrate today and whose kingdom is very much with us today. Friends, this morning's worship is full of paradox. We're celebrating an important festival of the church, Reign of Christ Sunday. And as a festival day, we use white paraments on our communion table, our pulpit, and throughout the church. It's also known as Christ the King Sunday. Yet King is a title that Jesus refuses when questioned by Pilate in this morning's gospel. Today is also the last Sunday of the liturgical church year, the New Year's Eve of the church calendar, if you will. Yet many of us have already shifted our focus and are anticipating the coming seasons of Advent and Christmas. We can see that just by driving around at the neighborhoods and looking at all the homes, all decorated for Christmas. And who ever heard of New Year's Eve occurring before Christmas? And yet another paradox. Our gospel reading this morning is actually a Good Friday reading. A Good Friday reading a week before Advent, when we'll turn our attention to the upcoming nativity and birth of Jesus. Unlike most other high holy days of the church, Christ the King Sunday is a relatively new and modern festival Sunday. It was proclaimed in 1925 by Pope Pius XI. And that context is important. In 1925, the world was still recovering from the horrors of the First World War. Adolf Hitler had just published Mein Kampf, which reignited and institutionalized the horrors of anti-Semitism. In 1925, fascism under Mussolini was taking hold in Europe. The drumbeat of nationalism was growing around the world. And a year later in this country, 40,000 members of the Ku Klux Klan marched on Washington to demand immigration restrictions based on nationality and race. Stop me if any of this sounds familiar. Pope Pius proclaimed Christ the King Sunday to counter these threats, to return people's focus to Christ, to declare Christ King over all of God's creation, to put the focus on the Prince of Peace. Now fast forward to today. Anti-Semitism is once again coming out of the shadows, but now anti-Muslim rhetoric is being added to the mix. The war in the Middle East is expanding and inflaming passions on all sides. There is war in Europe. Immigration is once again front and center in the political and public discourse. Christian nationalism is taking hold in some churches and parts of society around the country and perverting the true message of Jesus, which is the message of love of the neighbor. And we have one more troubling paradox this morning, the word king itself. King language is used throughout the Bible in talking about earthly kings, but also in talking about our heavenly king. But to our modern ears, King language can be problematic at best and destructive at worst. King language can be weaponized in search of power. It can be used in an attempt to create a toxic patriarchy that threatens the rights of others, women and our LGBTQ siblings especially. We need to be very, very clear when we refer to Jesus as King. Just this past week, Erica and I led worship just down the street at Bethlehem Woods. And during our time of prayer, we always ask people what they'd like to pray for. And one resident said, I want to pray for an end to the hatred, bitterness, and divisions in our society. I can't even talk to my friends anymore. We need God in our world. We need peace. My friends, we do indeed need Christ the King Sunday in 2024, every bit as much as the world needed it 100 years ago. But what does that even mean? How can celebrating the reign of Christ help us in a world awash in turmoil, self-centeredness, and outright hatred? Where, oh, where is the good news for our bad situation? John's Gospel can help us with that this morning. In the story we just heard, Pilate is interrogating Jesus, trying to find a civil crime that he can charge him with. Getting Jesus to admit that he is indeed a king would do it. After all, Caesar is the only king and Lord in the Roman Empire. If Jesus were to admit he were king, that would be treasonous. But Jesus doesn't accept the title of king, at least not an earthly king. My kingdom is not from this world. If it were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here. Twice in one verse, Jesus said that his kingdom is not from this world. But Pilate keeps pushing. So you are a king. Jesus once again turns it back on Pilate. You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Truth. Truth is a key theme throughout John's Gospel, from the very first chapter. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory as a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. The word truth occurs 25 times throughout the Gospel of John. And now, in today's reading, in his last earthly encounter before he is killed, Jesus is again talking about the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. But Pilate mocks him. What is truth? Think about it. Think about it. Pilate is literally looking the truth in the face and, like many people, either doesn't see it or, even worse, doesn't care. And that, dear friends, is a symptom of our world today. Truth doesn't seem to matter. Power seems to be the goal, not truth. In this month's Christian Century magazine, Denise Anderson, Director of Compassion, Peace, and Justice Ministries for the Presbyterian Church USA, points out that in a world in which misinformation, disinformation, and conspiracy theories abound, the truth is not always obvious. The lies are often so much louder and more insistent and definitely more abrasive. But the truth remains important in Jesus' reign. Truth, however, seems anathema today, probably because it's easier and often more profitable to deal in lies. Lies concentrate power among the few, while the truth disperses it among the many. Listen to that again. Lies concentrate power among the few, while truth disperses it among the many. People of grace, that's the good news for our bad situation this morning, the truth. the truth that is Jesus. Jesus' truth is not about power. Jesus gave up power through his surrender on the cross. Jesus' truth is all about humbling oneself. Jesus' truth is all about love. Jesus' truth is about caring for the vulnerable. And that is the truth that defeated the power of empire. And that truth is still very much with us today. That truth is the foundation we hold so tightly to now. That truth will give us strength and set us free. That truth will always come out on top. In just a moment, we're going to sing the hymn, God of Grace and God of Glory. And I invite you to intentionally reflect on the words as you sing them. They perfectly capture what God's grace and truth mean for us in our unsettled world today. And the fourth verses are, or at least my plea to God right now, save us from weak resignation to the evils we deplore. Let the gift of your salvation be our glory evermore. I invite you to sing it boldly. Friends, today's worship is full of paradox. Our world is full of paradox. And living in a world of paradox and uncertainty is difficult and frightening. But in a world of paradox, one thing stands out: truth. Jesus said, "Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Pastor and author Debbie Thomas sums up what it means to belong to the truth that is Jesus. Yes, we have good reasons to fear the erosion of truth, but we are not a people bereft of hope. The King who reigns will not abandon us. Truth will survive. It has died and returned to life already. The truth lives, and we belong to him. May it be so. Amen.